We like chapter 39, the gerund and the gerundive. So we already know about the gerundive. That's our future passive participle. So it has those endings in undus, inda, indum. And so Liber Legendis is a book about to be read, or a book that should be read. Remember, this future idea has the idea of obligation in this sense. Hic Liber Legendis est, this book should be read. Literally, this book is about to be read, but they use that to indicate obligation or an idea of purpose, that this is a book that should be read. Now, the gerund is simply one part of the gerundive, because remember, a participle is a verbal adjective, and of course, any adjective we can use like a noun anytime we want. So, for example, bonus is an adjective that means good, but if we can just use it to mean a good man, bonus, a good fellow. So likewise, when you take the gerundive and you use its neuter singular forms in the dative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative, then you're using it as a verbal noun. And so we do this in English. The English gerund ends in ing. I like reading. So I like the act of reading. And so we take a verb to read, we put ing on it, and that makes it a noun. I like reading. So likewise in Latin, you can use the gerund for this. So studium vivendi. So this vivendi is the gerund. It's a form of the gerundive, and it's used here as a noun, as a neuter singular, and that's obviously the genitive form. So fondness of reading, a habit. He has a fondness of reading, or living, vivendi, living with friends. He has a fondness of living with his friends. And now here it is used in the dative. Dat operam, remember to give opus, to give work means to give attention to. He gives attention to living well. He gives attention to living, the dative. We can use it with the accusative. Here he has she went. She went to Athens. It Athenas ad bene vivendum, for to live well, for living well. Ad here meaning for. She went to Athens for living well, to live well. And then we could also use it in the ablative. We become happier by living well. Fimus feliciores, we become happier, vivendi, by living well. So, the gerundive is an adjective. So you can remember that. Liber legendis, a book to be read. The gerund is a noun. We use it as a noun. Amor legendi, the love of reading. Now, what's interesting is that in practice, the use of the gerund was often overtaken by the use of the gerundive, which is very odd for us in English. So the gerund makes sense to us. The zeal of reading books. Legendi, genitive singular, easy to translate, of reading. Zeal of reading books, a fondness of reading books. But the Romans would really very rarely use it that way. Instead, they like to use the gerundive. Studium librorum legendorum, a fondness of books about to be read. And in English, boy, that just seems odd to us. So you just have to remember the gerundive will just take over this idea of making the verbal idea a noun. A fondness of reading books. A fondness for books about to be read. Or here, again, this one makes sense to us. The gerund, we learn, discimus, we learn by reading, legendo, so an ablative use, by reading books. But the Romans preferred to say libris legendis. We learn by books about to be read. We learn by reading books. So again, it seems odd to us in English, but you get used to it because they do use it quite a lot. this just means by reading books. This just means the same as the gerundive in the singular. And then often you'll see this all the time with odd plus the gerundive in the accusative, of course, to indicate purpose. So ad libros legendos venit. He came for reading books. In English we would say he came to read books. He came to read books. So, Wheelock spends a lot of time talking about it. There's the boiled down version. Really what we're getting to is when we see these gerundive phrases, we're just going to need to translate them in English idiomatically. We're not going to translate them literalistically. We learn by books to be read. No, this is just the way they say by reading books. Libris legendis, okay. Here are the translations. Do numbers 5 and 9, and then come back to get your second last chapter of translations.